A woman with a cane stood between armed mercenaries and a terrified child. Behind them, a forgotten town sat atop billions in hidden wealth. In 72 hours, blood would run through these streets unless she revealed the truth she'd buried with her own death certificate 5 years ago. Her real name, her real past, and why the most dangerous man she'd ever prosecuted had just walked into her coffee shop. But first, someone had to teach these bullies what happens when you threaten a haze. The morning Rita Calloway opened the Copper Creek Diner, she performed the same ritual she'd followed for 8 months. Check the locks twice, scan the parking lot through mirrored surfaces, calculate escape routes, keep the .38 Smith & Wesson within arm's reach. Old habits from a life she'd officially died leaving behind. At 37, with chestnut hair and a pronounced limp requiring a hand-carved walnut cane, Rita had mastered the art of invisibility in Pine Ridge, Wyoming, population 3,847, where newcomers remained newcomers for a decade and questions about the past were considered impolite. She'd chosen this forgettable speck on the map precisely because men like Victor Blackwell never looked in places like Pine Ridge. Men who built empires on fraud and murder, men she'd once sworn to bring to justice. The bell above the diner door chimed. Rita's hand moved instinctively toward the weapon beneath the counter before she registered the familiar face of Sheriff Dalton Pierce, 67 years old, silver-bearded, wearing his Colt 1911 like he still patrolled Baghdad instead of small-town Wyoming. "Coffee's fresh," Rita said, already pouring. Dalton settled onto his usual stool, studying her with eyes that had interrogated terrorists and cartel bosses. "Got a question for you." "Shoot." "You ever going to tell me why a woman with your education runs a diner in the middle of nowhere?" Rita met his gaze steadily. "Maybe I like pie. Maybe." Dalton sipped his coffee. "Or maybe you're running from something. Or someone." Before Rita could respond, the bell chimed again. 13-year-old Zoe Mitchell entered, moving carefully on her leg brace, backpack clutched tight. The girl's eyes found Rita immediately, relief washing over her young face. "The usual?" Rita asked gently, already preparing hot chocolate. Zoe nodded, sliding into her corner booth. Rita noticed fresh bruises on the girl's arms, barely visible beneath her sleeves. Dalton noticed too. "Who?" "The Scorpions," Zoe whispered. "At the bus stop. The local motorcycle gang. Trust fund dropouts playing at being outlaws, led by a 27-year-old thug named Derek Kane who terrorized anyone vulnerable enough to make an easy target." Rita felt something cold settle in her chest. She'd seen this pattern before. Bullies testing boundaries, predators hunting the weak. She'd also learned that doing nothing made you complicit. "Stay here," Rita told Zoe. "I'll drive you to school." What Rita didn't know was that across town, Victor Blackwell was checking into the Pine Ridge Inn under the name Raymond Black, representing Titan Energy Development, and that the forgotten town she'd chosen for its anonymity sat atop one of North America's largest lithium deposits. Or that her 8 months of hiding were about to end in gunfire, revelation, and a reckoning 5 years in the making. Frank "Grizzly" Patterson had been the first to spot the stranger in the $1,000 suit. At 71, Grizzly ran the town's motorcycle repair shop, his weathered hands still steady, his eyes still sharp. The steel shield tattoo on his forearm, usually hidden beneath his sleeve, marked him as something more than a simple mechanic. He'd served as a combat medic in 3 wars before finding his way to Wyoming. Before helping found the Iron Sentinels, a veterans motorcycle club that had evolved into something more vigilant, protective, sworn to defend communities against those who would exploit them. Grizzly watched the Lincoln Navigator with New York plates park outside Mayor Wilson's office, watched the suited man emerge carrying a briefcase that probably cost more than most Pine Ridge residents earned in a month. He pulled out his phone, dialing a number he hadn't called in 8 months. "Rita," he said when she answered. We need to talk. Now. 20 minutes later, they sat in the diner's back office. Grizzly had locked the door, drawn the shades. "His name is Victor Blackwell," Grizzly said without preamble, "though he's calling himself Raymond Black now." Rita's face went pale. "You're certain?" "Ran his plates, called in favors. It's him." Grizzly leaned forward. "What's he doing in Pine Ridge?" Rita was silent for a long moment. Then, moving carefully, she pushed aside a bookshelf to reveal a hidden room beyond. Grizzly followed her inside. One wall held surveillance monitors. Another displayed maps, photographs, documents connected by red string. The center wall was dominated by a single enlarged photograph of Victor Blackwell, surrounded by news clippings and crime scene photos. "Jesus, Rita," Grizzly breathed. "My real name is Rita Calloway Hayes," she said quietly. "I was a federal prosecutor. 5 years ago, I built a racketeering case against Blackwell and Titan Energy, fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder. We had witnesses, evidence, everything. What happened? The judge dismissed every charge. Evidence vanished. Witnesses disappeared. Rita's voice hardened. 2 days later, my car's brake lines were cut. My driver died. I survived, barely. The FBI faked my death to protect me while I recovered." Grizzly absorbed this, puzzle pieces clicking into place. "Your brother, Nathan, he was working undercover, gathering intel on Blackwell's operations. They discovered who he was," Rita's voice caught. "His brake lines failed 3 months before mine. And his daughter. Changed her name from Hayes to Mitchell, moved here with her mother, Linda. You were already in Pine Ridge, watching over them." Rita met his eyes. "Until I showed up and you started watching over me too." "Does Zoe know that I'm her aunt?" "Number, the less she knows, the safer she is." Rita turned back to the wall of evidence. "Until now." "What's Blackwell after in Pine Ridge?" Rita pointed to geological surveys on the board. "That's what I've been trying to figure out. He only appears personally when billions are at stake." Her phone buzzed. A text from Helen Reeves, the high school history teacher Rita had befriended. "Trouble at school. Come quick." They found Helen in the parking lot, shaken and angry. Derek Kane and his Scorpions had cornered her, threatening violence if she continued asking questions about Titan Energy's proposals. "They threatened the students," Helen said, voice trembling with fury. "Said schools could burn, children could get hurt." Rita and Grizzly exchanged dark glances. "It's starting," Rita said. Helen Reeves had returned to Pine Ridge after law school, choosing to teach history rather than practice law like her father, the former mayor. At 34, she'd found purpose in shaping young minds, even as her legal training occasionally surfaced. Like when she started investigating Titan Energy's sudden interest in Pine Ridge. Her father's files, donated to the school archives when he retired, contained geological surveys from the 1980s. Surveys that showed something valuable beneath the town's central district. Helen had mentioned this to Rita over coffee one evening. Now, watching Rita's reaction to the Scorpions' threats, Helen understood there was more to the diner owner than met the eye. "Come with me," Rita said, leading Helen back to the diner to the hidden room. Helen stared at the evidence wall, mind racing. "Who are you really?" Rita told her everything. The federal case, Nathan's death, her own staged death, Victor Blackwell's pattern of targeting small towns with hidden resources. "He's after lithium," Helen said suddenly, remembering her father's surveys. "Pine Ridge sits on a massive deposit, worth billions with current market prices." "That explains his presence," Rita confirmed. "Blackwell never handles operations personally unless the stakes are enormous." "We need to stop him," Helen said firmly. "This is my town. It's dangerous. Blackwell has connections everywhere. Corrupt officials, hired muscle, assassins when necessary." "I don't care." Helen's jaw set with determination. "He threatened my students." Rita studied her for a long moment, then nodded. We'll need evidence, concrete proof of his illegal methods and his real objectives. I can access my father's complete archives, Helen offered, everything he collected as mayor. Over the next 3 days, they worked in secret. Helen provided historical documents. Rita analyzed patterns and precedents from Blackwell's previous operations. Grizzly reached out to the Iron Sentinels, calling in warriors from across the country. And Zoe Mitchell, observant and intelligent despite her youth, began noticing things. The Scorpions taking orders via phone, new motorcycles they couldn't afford, whispered conversations with suited men from Titan Energy. She started keeping notes, just as her Aunt Rita had taught her without realizing the connection. Sheriff Dalton Pierce had spent 30 years in military service, including combat tours with the 75th Ranger Regiment. Another 20 as sheriff had taught him to read people, situations, the subtle tells that preceded violence. He'd been reading Rita Calloway since she arrived. Former prosecutor, he'd concluded within weeks. Running from something, possibly mob-related, given her vigilance and tactical awareness. When Victor Blackwell arrived in Pine Ridge, Dalton ran background checks, found carefully constructed legitimacy, but the kind that required serious money and connections to maintain. He confronted Rita at the diner after hours. "You want to tell me what's really happening?" he asked, voice hard. "Or do I start arresting people and sorting it out later?" Rita made a decision. She showed him the hidden room, explained everything. Dalton absorbed it all, his ranger training evident in how quickly he processed the tactical situation. "You're planning something." "Helen's going to approach Blackwell tomorrow," Rita confirmed, "wearing a wire. We need him admitting his real plans, his methods. He'll have her searched. We have equipment designed to evade detection. And if he finds it anyway?" Rita's expression hardened. "Then we go to Plan B, which is overwhelming force and documentation he can't suppress." Dalton nodded slowly. "The FBI? Already contacted. Special Agent Catherine Ross is an old colleague. She's assembling a task force, but they won't arrive until tomorrow afternoon. We need evidence before then." "I'm in," Dalton said simply. "Whatever you need." The Iron Sentinels arrived at dawn, 99 motorcycles rolling into Pine Ridge in formation, led by James Ironside Walker, a 70-year-old former Marine Force recon commander who'd co-founded the Sentinels with Rita's father decades ago. They weren't outlaws despite the leather vests and motorcycles. They were veterans, professionals, civilians bound by a code: protect the vulnerable, stand against corruption, be the shield when others cannot. Blackwell's hired security force, posing as federal agents, attempted to block their entry to town. Ironside simply displayed his Department of Justice credentials, real but from a defunct program, and informed them they were impeding a legitimate federal auxiliary. By the time Blackwell's people figured out the credentials were technically expired, the Sentinels had established defensive positions throughout Pine Ridge. Helen approached the Pine Ridge Inn at 10 a.m., her heart pounding but her exterior composed. The recording device in her watch, provided by the Sentinel's intelligence specialists, would capture everything. Victor Blackwell received her in a private suite, all polished charm and calculated interest. "Miss Reeves," he said smoothly, "this is unexpected." Helen dove in, presenting falsified geological data, suggesting the lithium deposit was twice its actual size. She claimed her father had kept secret surveys. She offered her cooperation in exchange for money and position. Blackwell studied her carefully, then smiled. "You're more pragmatic than I expected. What about your friend Rita Calloway? Your concerns for young Zoe Mitchell?" "Rita's naive," Helen said, forcing cynicism into her voice. "And Zoe's just a student I felt sorry for." "I see." Blackwell leaned back. "And you're willing to look the other way when inevitable accidents happen to those who oppose progress." "Accidents are unfortunate," Helen said carefully, but not my concern. The wire captured everything: Blackwell's admission of planning accidents for resistors, his confirmation of the lithium operation, his casual discussion of bribing officials. Then his head of security entered and recognized Helen from surveillance footage at Grizzly's shop. The trap sprung. Rita was 3 blocks away when the radio crackled with emergency traffic. Helen was compromised. Blackwell's people had made her as a plant. "Move now," Rita commanded. She'd been coordinating from a mobile command center, actually Grizzly's modified RV. "All units converge on the inn." She grabbed her cane and weapon, moving with practiced efficiency despite her limp. Dalton fell in beside her, shotgun ready. The sentinels hit the inn like a tactical strike force, coordinated, overwhelming, non-lethal, but utterly effective. Blackwell's security force found themselves facing decorated combat veterans who'd forgotten more about close-quarters combat than they'd ever learned. Helen was extracted safely, though shaken. The recording remained intact, but Blackwell himself escaped through a pre-planned exit, heading for a private airstrip outside town. "He's running," Ironside reported. "Units are in pursuit." "Let him run," Rita said coldly. "Right into Agent Ross's federal task force." Meanwhile, Zoe Mitchell was executing her own mission. With 2 sentinels as escort, she'd accessed the school archives, retrieving her grandfather's complete geological surveys and environmental impact studies. When Blackwell's remaining security force found them, the sentinels created a diversion, allowing Zoe to escape through maintenance tunnels with the precious documents. She emerged at the athletic field, where more sentinels waited with motorcycles. Grizzly himself took her in a vintage sidecar, racing toward Town Hall, where the emergency council meeting was about to begin. "You did good, kid," Grizzly told her as they roared down Main Street. "Your dad would be proud." "My dad?" Zoe asked, confused. Grizzly realized his slip. "Later. Right now, we save your town." Pine Ridge Town Hall overflowed with citizens drawn by rumors and the unmistakable presence of 99 iron sentinels forming a protective perimeter. Mayor Wilson called the meeting to order with visible nervousness, attempting to push through the zoning change that would give Titan Energy legal access to the Central District. Sheriff Dalton stopped him, shotgun visible, expression implacable. Then Rita entered, flanked by Ironside and Grizzly, carrying evidence that would expose everything. "Citizens of Pine Ridge," she began, her prosecutor's voice filling the chamber, "my name is Rita Calloway Hayes. Some of you know me as the owner of the Copper Creek Diner. What you don't know is that I'm a former federal prosecutor who specialized in corporate crime." The revelation rippled through the crowd as Rita continued, explaining Blackwell's pattern, Nathan's death, her staged death, the lithium deposit, the true nature of Titan Energy's plans. Zoe came forward with the geological surveys, her young voice steady as she explained what her grandfather had discovered and hidden to protect Pine Ridge from exploitation. Helen played the recording of Blackwell, admitting to planning accidents and bribing officials. The council vote was unanimous to reject the zoning change and call for federal investigation. As if on cue, FBI Special Agent Catherine Ross entered with a team of federal agents. "Victor Blackwell is in federal custody," Ross announced, "arrested at the county airstrip attempting to flee. We have warrants for 24 Titan Energy executives and officials involved in the conspiracy." Rita felt something release inside her. 5 years of hiding, planning, preparing. Finally, justice. Zoe approached her tentatively. "Grizzly called you my aunt." Rita looked down at the girl and Nathan's daughter, seeing Nathan's courage in her eyes. "Your father was my brother. He died investigating Blackwell. I'm sorry you had to learn this way. Why didn't you tell me? To protect you, to keep you safe." Zoe absorbed this, then stepped forward and hugged Rita tightly. "You kept me safe anyway." 1 year later, Pine Ridge had transformed. The lithium deposit was being developed responsibly under community ownership, profits funding schools, healthcare, infrastructure. The old bus stop where Zoe had been bullied now anchored the Nathan Hayes Memorial Plaza, a vibrant public space celebrating community resilience. At the dedication ceremony, Zoe stood at the microphone, 14 years old and fearless. "A year ago, I was bullied for being different," she began. "What happened next taught me that strength isn't about physical ability. It's about moral courage." She looked at Rita, standing proudly in the crowd. "My aunt taught me that sometimes all it takes to stop a bully is one person brave enough to stand up." Zoe smiled. "And sometimes, if you're really lucky, that person brings 99 friends on motorcycles." The crowd erupted in applause as the Iron Sentinels, present for the celebration, revved their engines in salute. Rita stood with Agent Ross, now a close friend and frequent visitor. Dalton joined them, retired but serving as security consultant for the Pine Ridge Resource Trust. "Think she'll join the Sentinels someday?" Ross asked, watching Zoe. Rita smiled. "I think she already has. She just doesn't know it yet." Grizzly approached, holding a leather vest in Sentinel colors, sized for a young woman. The steel shield emblem gleamed in the sunlight. "For when she's ready," he said. Rita took it, running her fingers over the symbol her father had designed decades ago. A promise, a legacy, a commitment to stand against injustice, regardless of cost. Behind them, carved into the memorial, were words that had become Pine Ridge's motto. "The measure of a community isn't how it treats its strongest members, but how it protects its most vulnerable. And beneath that, sometimes all it takes is one person brave enough to stand up." Rita Calloway Hayes had stopped running, had stopped hiding. She'd found something in this forgotten Wyoming town more valuable than lithium or safety. She'd found family, purpose, and proof that sometimes justice delayed isn't justice denied. Sometimes it's justice perfected, refined by suffering, strengthened by patience, delivered with overwhelming force by those who refuse to forget. And sometimes, in small towns that powerful men dismiss as insignificant, ordinary people accomplish extraordinary things. They stand, they fight, they win, and 99 motorcycles ensure the victory holds.